Welcome to Econverse, a podcast that breaks down the biggest economic trends and current affairs shaping our world. In this podcast, we cut straight through the headlines to reveal the real impact of economic shifts on businesses, governments, and most importantly, on you. So get ready, tune in, and join us as we make sense of the economy, one episode at a time.
Welcome back to Econverse, where we dig into the economic forces that shape our world.
That's right.
And today, we're doing a deep dive on something that's been making a lot of headlines all across the world.
Yeah.
It's the Indian Rupee and its recent slide against the U.S. dollar.
Yeah, it's a fascinating situation.
Yeah.
And there are so many factors
Right. It's not just like
at play.
one currency getting stronger than the other.
It's not that simple.
Yeah. We've got a whole stack of reports and analyses here.
Right.
And what I'm curious about is what are the real, tangible effects of this?
Yeah.
I mean, what does a falling rupee actually mean for people in India and for the global economy?
That's the real question.
Yeah.
And to understand that, I think we need to start with why
Right.
the decline is happening.
Right.
The Indian Express just reported that the rupee crossed 87 per US dollar.
Wow.
And that's a big drop from the depreciation rate of just 1.7% we saw last year.
That is quite a jump.
Yeah.
But I guess it's important to remember that, currencies go up and down all the time, right?
Oh, absolutely. Currencies fluctuate constantly.
Yeah.
But what's interesting here is that the rupee has generally depreciated against the US dollar at an average rate of 3.2% a year.
Okay.
Over the past 2 decades.
Yeah.
This recent drop is much sharper.
Right.
So the question is, what's driving this?
Now what's going on?
This accelerated decline.
But let's unpack that.
Okay.
Our sources point to a mix of global and domestic factors.
Exactly.
So kind of like internal and external pressures. Okay. Let's start with the global picture.
Right.
The U.S. dollar is very strong right now.
Yeah.
And one of the main drivers of this is rising U.S. Treasury yields.
So when those yields go up,
Yeah.
it suggests that interest rates in the U.S. are likely to rise.
Okay.
Higher interest rates tend to attract foreign investors seeking better returns,
Yeah.
which increases demand for the dollar.
So it's like a magnet.
Yeah.
For investors, they're like, oh, let's pull our money out of
Exactly.
these other currencies.
It's a flow of capital.
Hit it into dollars.
Right, into dollars. And
Right.
then that increased demand
Yeah.
pushes up the value of the dollar,
Naturally.
which puts pressure on other currencies
Right.
like the rupee.
So it's not just about India's economy.
Right.
It's like this global,
It's interconnected.
tug of war with currencies.
Double tug of war.
And the dollar's winning right now.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And then on top of that, you have things like global trade wars,
Right.
geopolitical
Clever.
tensions. These uncertainties create what we call a risk-off sentiment among investors.
So they get spooked and they're like, okay, let's run for cover.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They pull their money out of riskier assets. They seek safe haven currencies.
Right.
And what's the top safe haven currency?
The dollar.
The U.S. dollar.
Of course.
Think about it. The U.S. election results, the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict,
Right.
even the recent tariffs imposed by the U.S. on Canada and Mexico,
Yeah.
all of these contribute to this complex web of pressure
Yeah.
on emerging market currencies.
So it really is like a perfect storm of global events that are impacting the rupee.
It's a confluence of factors.
Okay,
Right.
but let's not forget about the domestic factors as well, right?
Right.
Our sources highlight a few key issues within India that are also playing a role.
Absolutely.
For example, India has this persistent trade deficit.
Right. That means India's importing more goods and services than it's exporting,
Okay.
which leads to a higher demand for U.S. dollars to pay for those imports.
And that demand for dollars further weakens the rupee, right?
Exactly.
So it's like a vicious cycle.
It's a bit of a downward spiral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you've got India's widening current account deficit,
Right.
which means that the country's spending more on foreign trade and investments than it's earning.
Right.
So it's like living beyond your means,
Yeah.
but on a national scale.
It's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's also the inflation differential.
Right.
India's inflation rate is currently higher compared to the U.S. And this difference erodes the rupee's purchasing power.
Okay.
Relative to the dollar.
So you're saying you need more rupees to buy the same amount of stuff in dollars.
That's right. It makes imports more expensive,
Right.
which adds to the pressure on the rupee.
Okay. And then there's also the issue of foreign capital outflows, right?
Yes.
Our sources mention that foreign institutional investors, or FIIs, are pulling their money out of India.
Yes, this is a significant factor. When FIIs pull their money out, they sell their rupee-denominated assets and convert those rupees back into dollars, further increasing the demand for dollars and weakening the rupee.
Okay, so we've got this mix of global and domestic pressures pushing the rupee down. But what I'm really interested in is, like, what's the impact?
Yeah.
What does this actually mean for people in India?
Well, it's interesting because while a falling rupee presents challenges, it also creates opportunities.
Okay.
For instance, it can make Indian exports more competitive in the global market.
So if things made in India become cheaper for people buying them in other countries, demand could go up.
Precisely. And this is particularly good for sectors like IT and pharmaceuticals, which are major export earners for India.
Right.
A weaker rupee could lead to higher export revenues, potentially boosting the economy.
Interesting. So there's an upside for some businesses?
Right.
What about everyday people?
Well, there's the impact on remittances.
Okay. Money that Indians living abroad send back home becomes more valuable when converted into rupees.
Right, because they're sending dollars.
Exactly.
Which now buy more rupees.
That's right.
That could be a big help to families in India.
Absolutely.
It can be a lifeline.
Especially in these uncertain times.
Yes. But, of course, there are also downsides to a falling rupee.
Yeah.
One of the most immediate concerns is the impact on imports.
Yeah, I can imagine everything from, like, electronics to fuel.
Everything
becomes more expensive when the rupee's weak.
Exactly. And this is especially concerning for crucial imports like crude oil.
Right.
Which India relies heavily on. A weaker rupee significantly increases the cost of these imports, directly contributing to inflation and eroding the purchasing power of everyday people.
So the double whammy for consumers.
It is.
Prices go up because of inflation.
Right.
Your money buys less because the rupee is weaker.
Exactly. It's a difficult situation. And it also affects Indian companies with foreign loans.
Right.
They now need more rupees to repay those loans, which puts a strain on their finances.
Yeah.
And can hinder investment.
So it's like this ripple effect.
Yes.
A weaker rupee makes it harder for businesses to operate and invest, which ultimately hurts the whole economy.
Exactly. And then there's the impact on foreign investment.
Right.
A weaker rupee can make India seem like a riskier investment destination, potentially leading to capital flight, less foreign direct investment.
So a falling rupee can actually scare away investors, leading to less investment, which then further weakens the economy.
It's that vicious cycle again.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the big picture. It's important to consider the everyday impact on people in India.
Yeah.
Think about students wanting to study abroad.
Right.
Families planning a trip overseas. A falling rupee makes these things significantly more expensive.
Wow. So it really is touching every aspect of life in India.
It is a multifaceted issue.
So what are the chances that this trend will, like, reverse anytime soon?
Well, that's where things get a bit murky.
Of course, predicting the future of currency markets is never easy.
Right?
But our sources did offer some potential scenarios, right?
They did. There are contrasting views.
Okay.
Some analysts predict further depreciation.
Okay.
The State Bank of India, for example, forecasts a potential 8 to 10% decline against the U.S. dollar.
Wow.
During President Trump's second term.
That doesn't sound very optimistic.
No, it doesn't.
But didn't some sources mention, like, a potential correction?
Yes. Some believe that India's currency might have been overvalued previously.
Okay.
And this correction, while painful in the short term, could ultimately be healthy.
Interesting.
In the long run.
So it's a mixed bag of predictions.
It is a bit of a crystal ball situation.
Yeah. Is there anything that can be done to, like, stabilize the rupee?
Well, the Reserve Bank of India, the RBI, is actively taking measures to try and stabilize the situation.
Yeah, I've heard about them, like, selling dollars from their reserves, buying rupees, adjusting interest rates.
All of those tools are in play.
But it sounds like a delicate balancing act.
Absolutely. They're trying to control inflation, support growth, and manage the rupee's exchange rate all at the same time.
Wow. So what's your take on the future of the rupee?
It's really hard to say with certainty.
Yeah.
There are so many factors at play.
Of course.
Both domestically and globally.
It's certainly a complex economic puzzle.
It is.
With no easy answers.
Yeah, but what I find fascinating is how this deep dive into the rupee's fall reveals so much about India's place in the global economy.
It highlights India's vulnerability to global economic forces.
It does.
But also its resilience and its potential for growth.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that we're all interconnected.
Yeah.
And even seemingly distant events can have this ripple effect on our lives.
That's a wrap for this episode of Econverse. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening right now. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment on YouTube or leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us reach more listeners like you. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep exploring the world of economics.